Well, I am just delighted today to be here with one of my great musical heroes and a man of tremendous spirituality too, and I'm talking about Dion DiMucci. Dion, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
Thank you, Bishop, for the invitation. I've been listening to you for like ever, and here I am.
Well, the same is true for me listening to you, all my life, and I'm eager to talk to you about both, music and spirituality and maybe how those two things come together, because you exemplify both, so beautifully. When you arrived today, you had your Yankees cap on, and I really think of you as a real New Yorker. You're a Bronx man, right? Born in the Bronx, near Fordham, near the Bronx Zoo, near Yankee Stadium. And that your music, it's so conditioned by those streets, isn't it? You came up out of that experience.
Yeah, it's like black music filtered through an Italian neighborhood, comes out with an attitude. Yo, it's the street sounds. It's the attitude of the streets,
Yeah, I know you sense that, of course, in all that wonderful early work of yours. I read something some years ago I thought was really intriguing and right, that you're a bridge figure in many ways. You think of people like, Sinatra and Tony Bennett and Bobby Darin and Dean Martin, that kind of 1950s crooner, big band sound. Then you move up into rock and roll in the 60s. And you're a bridge, aren't you? There's a lot of that 50s in you and that great singing, and that you can play rock and roll with the best of them.
Well, I listened to Louis Prima. My father was a big Louis Prima fan and a big Al Jolson fan. And those guys at that time were like free abandon musicians. Louis Prima would be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame if he didn't sing Italian songs, because Sam Butera, who played sax, one of the best sax players on the planet.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of some of the crooning stuff. I don't know. I really fell in love with Hank Williams when I was about 10, 11 years old. I heard him on my transistor from a country station out of Newark, New Jersey. And man, I ran up to a record shop up on Fordham Road and I started collecting his records. And when I learned that he had an alter ego like Luke the Drifter, he had these songs where he'd talk about people and compassion and empathy and he's like the hillbilly Shakespeare.
Hillbilly Shakespeare, they call him. Yeah.
I learned how to live listening to these records while my parents were arguing. I'm listening to Luke the Drifter talk about black and white. What was going on back then in the South?
There's so much to me interesting about that, because I'm a big rock and roll fan. Where's rock and roll come from? Well, some mixture of blues, rhythm and blues, a little bit of jazz, a lot of gospel, and country, right? All kind of contribute to rock and roll. Yeah. And Hank Williams, we'll talk maybe more about the mutual hero of ours, Bob Dylan, but Dylan's son, Jacob, said that one time when he was a little kid, his dad would take the kids on these long, long car rides, and it wouldn't talk. His dad would just put on Hank Williams and listen to Hank Williams over and over again.
My kind of guy.
Yeah, what is it? Because I love Hank Williams, and the voice is not, a refined voice by any means. And the writing, he's rightly called a hillbilly Shakespeare because, it's not at Shakespeare's level, but there's an economy of expression, right? the choice of words is so right, and the imagery is so good. So you were struck by that as a young guy.
And his sound,
Right.
See, I grew up in an Italian neighborhood in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And my uncles and what they listened to in the bar rooms, what was coming out of the bar rooms were all the Italian crooners, like Al Martino and Sinatra and Tony Bennett. When I heard Hank Williams, he grabbed onto a word, and especially at the end of a sentence, he would dig into it and rip it off at the end.
Yeah.
And no vibrato at all.
Uh-huh.
He was just so committed mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, and it just grabbed me.
It does grab you now, even now, doesn't it? When I hear his songs, those simple songs, but they hit you at the level of the soul. And he's dead at the age of about 29, isn't he, Hank Williams?
Yeah.
Drank himself to death, But yet, the one I heard recently by him was I Saw the Light. So he comes out of that experience of, addiction, and he kind of rediscovers religion. and writes this tremendous song about the Lord, you know, and with that penetrating simplicity. I think it's very cool that you were so struck by him as a young guy.
I wonder sometime, you know, even myself, I've written songs. Like I wrote a song called Born to Cry, and the last verse it said, I don't know, maybe soon the master will call, and when he calls, I won't cry at all, you know. I didn't know God from a hole in the wall, but I'm writing about God.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know a lot about these guys. They're close, you know, God's in our lives, but we're not conscious of it.
We're all haunted by God, whether we know it or not, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got a hungry heart. So another
Absolutely, yeah.
an Italian rock and roller said, you know, musically, I grew up with rock and roll. And so I you know, drums and rhythm is really important to me. And, but I discovered Sinatra when I was in my late 20s, I think. I was a young priest. I forget how it happened, but I never listened to that kind of music growing up. But to me, it was the Stones and the Beatles and the Who and Van Morrison and, you know, Prince and Springsteen, and those are the people I listened to. But I discovered Sinatra. It was the voice. Because I mean, there are great singers in rock and roll. You're one of them. But you know, rock and roll, the stress is more on the rhythm and the energy, right? When I heard Sinatra and the phrasing, and then his tone is like a cello. I mean, the tone of his voice. It was like a whole world opened up to me. I didn't know that world of like melody and the quality of the singing. And to this day, I'm a huge Frank Sinatra fan, and that opened up that world to me. But see, when I found you, the bridge thing, I thought, well, he sounds like Sinatra. He's got the tonality, and he's got the guitar chugging away, and he's playing rock and roll, right? That makes you an important figure.
I'm not aware of it, but I grabbed onto all these, all this music that was transitioning. In fact, the song I just mentioned, Born to Cry, I was walking in Pelham Bay, an adjacent neighborhood, a Jewish neighborhood, just on the other side of Bronx Zoo.
Yeah.
And I was passing a synagogue, and I heard this cantering sound. You know, I know now they call it cantering, but I went in, I had my tank top on. I didn't know, I was like 16. I'm like, yo, what's going on here? What is this? And I meet Henry Rosenblatt, and he says, come back here. And he brings me in the back, and he's playing me records of his father, who was Ursula Rosenblatt, who was in the original Jazz Singer. You know, and they do all that. You know, I went home, I wrote Born to Cry, and it's like Jewish rock and roll. It's like fusion. You know,
Cantileting style.
You know, we didn't have YouTube, so I was picking up on sounds from Hank Williams to, Sinatra. See, the great singers, and I didn't know this, I mean, consciously, but a great singer knows how to inhabit the character that's singing the song.
Yeah, talk about that. I think that's really right. And Sinatra says that he's telling a story and he's entering emotionally. You do that in your song.
I've always done it naturally. When I heard about it, I went, gee, I never thought about that. But when I go back and listen to my early records, I say, wow, I'm doing that. It's just a gift. But the great singers, and because most people think that rock and rollers or rock artists, they're always singing about themselves. They're not. There's a lot of characters they're singing about, you know. And the trick is to inhabit that character. Sure, there's part of you in the song, but the great singers do that, you know, and Sinatra's one of them. And Van Morrison, you could go on and on and on with these guys, but
he's one of my great musical heroes too, Van Morrison. I discovered him at the Last Waltz, the famous film about the last concert of the band, and Van comes out and sings, you know, Caravan. And wow, it was the same thing. It was the quality of the voice and the passion of it. And then, of course, he's a deeply spiritual man, too. His lyrics they're redolent of the Bible.
My wife has 10 Van Morrison CDs in the car. She won't sell the car because she has a CD player in it.
Yeah. Hey, tell me, it's staying again with music for a second. Why is it? I'll date myself, go back to like playing the radio in the car, right? Why is it you listen to a lot of songs and then one of your classic songs comes on, like, Ruby Baby or The Wanderer or, Runaround Sue, and I would sit up in the car and it would get my attention. There's something about, I think, the quality of the recording of the music in those days. Your voice, obviously, what is it? Why do your songs, now the 60 years later, to me, they still cut through the static of so much music today?
Well, there's a difference in writing a song and writing a great song.
Yeah.
I wish I knew.
Yeah.
But I really, sometimes I'm just under the spout where the glory comes out, well, like Bob Dylan says, under the wellspring of creativity. And it just comes down, Like there was this guy walking down Crotona Avenue, the main, my neighborhood, my little apartment my parents' apartment was adjacent to Crotona Avenue, and Jackie Burns used to come walking down Crotona Avenue like in the 50s, He was a sailor, and he had the tank top on, his hair, and he had tattoos, and he'd go out with a girl named Flo, and he'd tattoo it on his arm, then he covered up with a panther and get Mary tattooed, and Janie, and he covered up, and then he got Rosie on
Rosie on my chest.
I said, this guy deserves a song,
Yeah.
And we kind of invented kind of a white blues approach to rock and roll, I think, because the blues singers were like on the offbeat. The blues singers are like, but they're on the offbeat. But I did, I'm the type of guy that likes to, like right on the downbeat.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
We were just trying stuff. We didn't have many models, but Louis Prima, I'm a rhythm singer.
Yeah.
I can't hold a note. But I loved the stuff I was listening to. I'd go down to the Apollo Theater, and they had all these black musicians, these, like Big Al Sears and Ray Prysock and Sam the Man Taylor. They'd come out in front of the stage, with white suits and red suits and gold horns and and I ran out. I said, I went crazy. I was like 16. I said, I got to do something.
Did you, at that
drove
stage,
me crazy.
No, to me that's really fascinating. Did you have a musical training in any formal way? None. So who gave you the guitar? How old were you?
I had an uncle who bought me a guitar. This is a funny story. He bought me a guitar because I know we're all over the place with
That's
this,
right.
but I heard a singer called Jimmy Rogers. He sang, "You're the one who really gives me a buzz. I didn't think I could last much longer, but it shows you just how wrong I was." And I was like, I heard that, and I ran out of my house up to the corner, and I told the guys, I heard a guy rhyme was with buzz. And they looked at me like,
what's wrong with this guy?
Something's wrong. What'd you eat, And I had to, so I started telling my uncle, and he bought me an L1 guitar. It was in a pawn shop.
Yeah.
Gibson.
Yeah.
If I had that guitar today, I could sell it, I could retire.
Right.
That's a beautiful guitar he bought me. I didn't know anything about guitar.
Who taught you how to play it?
Well, I learned I bought one of those
Chord books?
I forget the name of it.
Yeah.
Those chord books, and I learned one chord,
Okay.
2 chords. When I got 3 chords, I was in. I could sing all Hank Williams songs.
3 chords in the truth.
And I went out to the corner. I said, "This is what I heard.
Yeah.
You're the one who really gives me a buzz." I started playing.
Yeah.
I had a show, and then they'd say, "Do that again," And then a funny thing happened to me. I was sitting on a stoop one day, and there was about 8 guys in front of me. And I started to sing, "No one knows what I go through and the tears I cry for you." And and it's just a pose. When I smile, it's just a pose. My heart's restless, but no one knows. They went crazy.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, you know, I could sing stuff I could never tell anybody. I could never speak this to anybody. I'd get punched.
But it gave you permission to say it when you were singing.
You bypass that critical, cynical, argumentative part, you know, that thinking part. You just go right past it, and they accept. That's why all those guys are sitting in the barroom, putting money in the jukebox, listening to Only the Lonely, Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
So you can use it to sell anything, you know.
Where'd the Belmonts come from, and the people that sang with you, and when did that start? People doing these wonderful doo-wop harmonies and everything.
That was an accident.
You found each other somehow?
There was a black janitor who brought me down to Manhattan. There was this little record company opening up. They loved me. I sang a Carl Perkins song for them. I was about 17 years old. They signed me that day. Bring your parents down, witness the signature.
Wow.
Then they wanted to put me with these people, you know, this group, you know, you know, like from Oklahoma or something. You know?
Yeah, it wasn't your thing.
So I said, listen, if you want me to sing with some guys, I'll go back to the neighborhood, recruit some of the guys up there. And I did. I went back. There was this guy, Carlo. He was like a savant.
Huh.
He was into jazz. It was Angelo. He was an opera singer. He had a beautiful voice, perfect pitch. Freddie knew harmonies. He could sing in falsetto but low. So I recruited these guys, brought them down. We got us on the train ride down there. We were rehearsing in my apartment the song "I Wonder Why." Carlo was singing. You could Google it. He was singing like a rivet gun. He started singing, you know. The tenor, Angelo, started singing, woo, you know, just gliding over it. Freddie was in the middle going, wah, 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 woo, wah, 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 woo. And I'm singing lead. It was like I was on a carousel in heaven.
Yeah.
These four kids singing this song. Everybody singing something different. It was like Dixieland.
And you just figured it out. I mean, you just experimenting. You just found those harmonies.
It was crazy. The first shot right out of the box, I was like, what is this?
And when you're doing the recordings, was an engineer or anyone there saying, "No, okay, guys, let's try it another way," or were you just kind of doing it and they turned the microphones on?
The only thing is when they brought musicians in, they started playing. I didn't like what they were playing. You know, tick, 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 tick. I thought it was like a little, but everything worked. Everything worked.
No, as I say, those songs, they jump out of the speaker at you. Even today, they're like, boom, they get your attention. And it's a combination of all that. It's the singing, it's the harmonies, it's the immediacy of the recording or whatever, but they're amazing.
You know what it is? I don't know what era, you're a little later.
Yeah.
But I come from the Renaissance. It was like what was popular was great.
Yeah.
Great music was popular. From the late 50s through the 60s. It was one. It wasn't like, oh no, you go here to listen to great music and you go here to listen to popular music. No, it was one. And it was a magical time, you know, the Beatles and stuff.
And of course, you're one of the two American singers on the cover of Sgt. Pepper, huh? You and Bob Dylan.
Till this day, I tell everybody, you young kids, you're making an album, put my face on your album cover, you'll sell a lot.
Well, I mean, you can hear your influence of the Beatles for sure, you know, and someone you have in common, and I want to talk about him a little bit, is Buddy Holly. So we talked about Hank Williams, his influence, the kind of doo-wop singing from the Bronx. You were very closely involved to the events of the day when the music died. Talking about February the 3rd, 1959, right? The day when the plane went down carrying the Big Bopper, Richie Valens, and Buddy Holly. And you know, that happened not far from where we're sitting. We're sitting in Rochester, Minnesota. That took place in northern Iowa, about an hour and 20-minute drive from where we're sitting. And you were there. And people forget you were part of that tour. You're what, 20 years old at the time, 1959? Right?
I was 19.
You were 19.
Buddy Holly was 22. You know, Bishop Barron, that was like, I go back there in my head, it was one of the most beautiful things that tour, it was one of the first tours I went on.
Must have been, right? You were a kid.
And it was like the best thing that ever happened to me. You know? Like I'm a kid from the Bronx. My parents are arguing over the $36 a month rent every day. My father must have been on the spectrum. He had wonderful qualities, artist, sculpt, swam, acrobatic. He was an unbelievable guy. He was like my hero, but he never worked. He couldn't work.
Yeah.
He couldn't get it. So I'm on this, I get a hit record. I make friends, I become friends with Buddy Holly. And we go out on tour with Richie Valens and the Big Bopper. We start the tour in Chicago. Well, we didn't start it. We rehearsed in Chicago, got on this little yellow, looked like a little yellow Baptist school bus.
And freezing cold, they say, right? The heater wasn't working right.
You know, we didn't have a Golden Eagle Willie Nelson bus, let's put it that way.
Right.
So we drive up to Milwaukee. We start out at Divine Ballroom. And we're crisscrossing the Midwest for 2 weeks. 20 below, 30 below. Bus starts breaking down. You know, the fan belts break, the heat is breaking.
Yeah.
And the band, Buddy Holly, the Crickets didn't want to come out, so he got these new guys. He got, and Waylon Jennings.
Waylon Jennings was there.
Was one of them, yeah. He was a young guy, and he was playing bass for Buddy Holly. He wasn't Waylon Jennings
I don't think
yet.
he played bass at all, Waylon Jennings.
He was a kid, you know.
Yeah.
And he played too loud. We always tell him, Waylon, turn it down. So we're on tour out there, and it starts getting, you know, we're out there for about 2 weeks. Buddy starts getting frustrated. He wants to charter a plane to fly from Clear Lake, Iowa to Fargo.
To Fargo, yeah.
So when we drove into Clear Lake at the Surf Ballroom, Carol Anderson, the guy who managed the Surf Ballroom, he went out to Dwyer called a friend of his who owned an airfield, and he said, you know, Buddy wants to, and they put it together. Buddy chartered the plane, and he wanted to recruit the headliners, you know, because we were the ones making the money to bring the cost down.
Yeah.
It come to $36. The price that my parents, well, he tells me this after I win a coin toss and I get a seat on the plane.
You won the coin toss and could have gotten on the plane.
He says, it's $36. I said, I'm not going. I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not spending a whole month's rent of an hour-and-a-half flight. You know, so I give my seat to Richie. I said, take a jacket. You know, they said, take care of the guitars, they told me. So I became, you know, I was fine with the bus. I thought, I don't care. I had my group, my boys with me, so. But, you know, they took off that night after we were having such a good time.
It was after midnight. Huh? You had the show that night, and after midnight, the plane takes off.
We had a great time. The place was jammed.
Yeah.
Buddy did his last song. We all came out. We sang Travel On, and we used to close with that, you know. And the beautiful thing about it is, you know, there's no guitar solos on Buddy Holly records.
Yeah.
In person, we used to lengthen the guitar solos. We were all like, had these new Fender guitars. We were having so much fun. And, you know, that night they got in the station wagon, went out to the airfield, got on that plane. 5 minutes after it took off, Roger Peterson drove the plane into the ground because it was just the storm that came in. He, you know, they call it scud running. where he thought he could make it if you fly low enough and you look at the farmhouse lights and the street lights and the cars, you could make it. But it was blinding snow. He didn't know and he didn't know how to read the instruments because they had changed the I don't know, from that seesaw to a gauge. I don't know. And if you're a little off, if you're not level, you will drive the plane right into the ground, like it happened to John F. Kennedy Jr. Same thing.
Yeah.
And when you don't know he didn't know which way, you know, if he was level. And the next day we arrived, and you know, the locals were watching this TV in the lobby of the hotel.
You were already up in northern Minnesota. You had left by car, huh? Or you were still there?
We took the bus all night. We didn't know anything.
So you didn't know it happened.
We didn't know anything about it.
Wow.
And when we got to, I think it was Moorhead.
Moorhead, right.
Walked into the hotel, and you know, it was just blaring on the TV. These three rock and roll stars died, you know, 4 altogether with the pilot. And it was hard to, it was hard to digest. You didn't know what to do with it. I went out to the bus, I sat on the bus, and I'm looking at their outfits hanging, you know, from the luggage racks and their guitars. And I just didn't know what to do with it. You know, and in a moment like that, you ask yourself, who am I?
Yeah.
Why am I here? Yeah. What's this all about? Where am I going? You know, all those questions. And when I got home, I went over to Mount Carmel Catholic Church, which was the hub of Little Italy in the Bronx, and knocked on Monsignor Pedernaconi's door, and I asked him, and he said, Dion, in our faith, relationships never end. He said, in fact, they don't stay stagnant. You pray for them, they're closer to the beatific vision, they're growing in grace, they're close, they're being filled, they're by the time you see them again, your relationship will have moved forward. And that gave me a lot of hope, and he told me something I never knew.
So you still kind of reach out to those friends of yours from long ago?
Yeah, I do that in prayer occasionally, you know, with all my relatives, and yeah.
You know, it's wonderful to hear you talk about that, because it was such a pivotal day, wasn't it? So famously, the American Pie, you know, the day the music died, there was something about that moment. Because Buddy Holly, along with Little Richard and Chuck Berry, basically invents what we call rock and roll. I mean, he gives form to it. The Beatles are so influenced by him. The Stones are. I mean, everybody.
2 guitars, bass, and drums.
Right. I mean, it's but especially in those days, a very small group. But boy, again, the sound of Buddy Holly to this day. What was he like when he was playing? What was he like on stage? Was he?
It was funny. Off stage, he was like an accountant.
Really? With the glasses and
tall, statuesque. Very decisive. Very decisive. That's the one thing that struck me about him. He was like an old soul. He moved to New York. He was taking flying lessons out of Teterboro Airport.
Is that right?
He started a publishing company. He was 22 years old.
A kid.
I was I was learning how to hail a cab. Hello, you know. You know, this guy was off the charts. He was, but I learned some things from him. He said to me one day, he said, listen, I don't know how to succeed, but I know how to fail. Try to please everybody. And you definitely will fail. So if he didn't tell me that, I don't know if I would have made Runaround Sue or The Wanderer or Ruby Baby or any of those records.
Did you notice this? It really struck me when I listened to Bob Dylan's Nobel Prize acceptance speech, right? And he says, well, you know, where it all began, and you're expecting him to say was with Woody Guthrie. And we all know that story, you know, Dylan and Woody Guthrie and going to New York and meeting him. He didn't say Woody Guthrie, though. He said, it all began with Buddy Holly. And it was on that tour when Buddy Holly and you, the gang, were in Duluth, Minnesota, and the young Bob Dylan shows up at the concert. And he said, I was right there on by the stage watching Buddy Holly. And he said, at one point, Buddy Holly looked at me right in the eyes, and it was though he transferred something to me. And it really struck me that, but you wouldn't naturally think right away Buddy Holly and Bob Dylan, but he was the one that got Dylan inspired, he said.
He was a force.
Right.
I mean, just think about it. I don't know if Woody Guthrie would have affected me like that, maybe lyrically.
Yeah.
But not, you know, like I said, Buddy Holly was like an accountant and off stage. But soon as he strapped on that Stratocaster and walked on stage and took the stance and hit that chord, and it rang for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It was like, hold on to your butt, man, here we go. You know, it was like, and it was a lot of fun. It was, you know, he wrote some beautiful songs.
He sure did.
Yeah.
I just heard one the other day. Not That'll Be the Day, or the real famous ones, but another one. And again, the simplicity of it. They're a bit like Hank Williams that way too, the simplicity of it. But there's something about the singing and the arrangement that is just boom, you know, it just jumps out at you.
You know, like I was saying, some people are born remarkable.
Yeah.
And they just seem to make the world sparkle.
Yeah.
And he was one of them.
Hey, I want to talk about spirituality now a bit, but as a bridge, I want to use, you know, arguably your greatest song, The Wanderer, which is a great song, obviously. But probably most people, they hear that song and think, oh, this is a song about some, you know, really cool cat making his way around and full of confidence and he's cocky and all this stuff. But it's actually about a bit of a jerk, right? A guy that has, you know, I got 2 fists of iron, but I'm going nowhere.
Exactly.
Right? And the wanderer, and oh, it's cool, I'm wandering around. But he's kind of a lost soul, isn't he?
Yeah.
The narrator of that song.
Yeah.
Talk about
he is. But in the 50s, everything was done in a major key.
Yeah.
And it rocked. So people take it a certain way, you know. Yeah. Today it would probably be done in a minor key.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe do a little slower or something, you know. But I always say, you know, I was doing an album called Yo Frankie in New York, and I sang on a cut, Lou Reed's new album, Dirty Boulevard. And I said, well, why don't you come upstairs and sing on King of the New York Streets? I wrote a song called King of the New York Streets. It goes, people call me the scandalizer. The world was my appetizer. I turned gangs into fertilizer. I'm king of the New York streets. Yeah. It's like, yo, the kid is here.
Right.
So I was always like into this satire, you know, those songs, when I heard Muddy Waters do I'm a Man, Hoochie Coochie Man, it just, there's so over the top.
Right.
You know, so I did a song called I'm the Gangster of Love. Baby, don't you want a man like me? I got the cure.
Yeah.
You know, all these, you know, I'm king of the New York streets. I'm the wanderer. You know, I just, so Lou says, you know, you got to move on from the wanderer, Dion. I said, Lou, this is satire. If you get satire, you get me. I said, this is so much fun to sing for me.
You're mocking that character in a way, right? You're
well,
mocking.
You know, King in the New York Streets ends with, I was wise in my own eyes. I awoke one day and I realized this attitude come from cocaine lies. I'm king of the New York streets. You know, it tells on itself, you know. But people still go, yo, you're king of the New York streets. I say, no, did you listen to, you're out of line. You're king of the New York streets.
Yeah. No, but you were seeing through to the spiritual heart of some of that stuff. And yes, the hunger for God is always there, but also accompanying it is attachment and is addiction and all the false paths we take, huh? Looking for God in all the wrong places. Everyone's looking for God, but we get hung up on all sorts of stuff. You mentioned in the book something that you took from me was the whole wealth, pleasure, power, honor, right?
Absolutely.
Well, look, I got that from Thomas Aquinas, and it was your parish priest, right, taught you about Thomas Aquinas as a kid, and the life of virtue was the happy life, right? That's exactly it. Is Thomas says, we're all trying to find God. But we make these mistakes. We say, well, if I have enough wealth, I'll be happy. I have enough power, I'll be happy. I'm the king of the New York streets. Look at me. I have enough fame. Everyone looks up to me. But all those things are dead ends, right? But it's like we have to live through it. You can't just hear that message and then get it. You have to kind of live your way through it.
I don't know. I work with guys a lot. I hear them a lot. Newcomers, and people that are, because I'm in a spiritually based 12-step program, and I hear a lot of the guys coming up, and it's just the same pattern,
Yeah.
What happens is you think, well, if I get the money, if I get the job, the position, if I get that position,
then I'll be happy.
I get the girl,
Right.
honor, I'm in.
Yeah.
I got it made. And then you're going, but something's missing, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. You start drinking and then you get lost in that, or you're doing this and that. And I know how to get over this. I need a little more money.
Yeah.
I need a little more sex. I need a little, and it just goes nowhere. And it'll beat your brains in. What happens is a lot of guys, I have a lot of friends that fall in love with the search for truth.
Yeah.
Capitalize the word search.
Yeah.
They look sensitive, I'm searching, and they stay there. God forbid they should make a decision and commit. That's a whole other deal, because then you got to change.
Yeah.
That's a whole other deal. And by the grace of God, that happened to me. And when I think about it, I just look up to heaven and say, thank you, that you broke through that cynicism, that critical, argumentative person I was. I'm from New York. I want to argue with everybody. I'm right. I got to win. I got to be better. All that. You just watch the Jersey Housewives or the New York Housewives and you see it.
Yeah. No, I'll go back to Dylan again, because you mentioned him in here when you listen to Like a Rolling Stone, which is, I think, his greatest song. It's my favorite song. I think it's a song that's all about the spiritual life, ultimately. Once upon a time, you dressed so fine, through the bumps of time in your prime, didn't you? You were something. You thought you were really, But how does it feel to be on your own, like a complete unknown, like a Rolling Stone? And you think, okay, that sounds great. I'm just going to be a Rolling Stone. I'm going to do whatever I want. But that's not it. That language of Dylan is like the spiritual masters, right? Because you're riding high and you're finding wealth, pleasure, power, honor, and you think you're hot stuff. But that's not it. When you're freed from those attachments, you're on your own, a complete unknown. No one knows you. Don't worry about fame anymore. No direction home. There's no going back. That's the Israelites, right, leaving Egypt. Oh, we want to go back. Take us back to the flesh pots of Egypt. At least there we had enough to eat,
Right.
Yeah, but you were a slave there. Oh, no, I want to go back home. No direction home. You keep going, And like a Rolling Stone, it's often occurred to me, a Rolling Stone isn't going where it wants. A stone follows this natural path. See, well, that's all of us, right? We're wired for God, and God wants us free from all that stuff, so that like a rolling stone, we can follow our natural tendency toward God. So that there's sort of that wonderful cry of freedom in that song. How does it feel? Well, it feels great, because that's what the spiritual life's all about. Freedom, right? But properly construed freedom.
Well, you hit me right between the eyes. I read Catholicism, or I was watching the Catholicism series.
Oh, yeah.
And it was back in 2014.
2011. It came out in 2011, yeah.
I'm watching this series, and somewhere along the line, you mentioned this thing, which is so, it reminded me of the program I'm in, very much so.
Yeah.
And you said, you try to fill your life with wealth, pleasure, power, and honor, and it doesn't work. There's something, and you think it's going to give you freedom. And if you don't have God in your life, you'll continue along those lines, and it's not going to take you. It's a dead end.
It's addiction.
You said, but with God, the achievement of freedom and peace and the good he makes it possible. And And I thought, well, I've been working these 12 steps, and I understand what that is. I get it. And when you have that spiritual awakening, he shapes your desire for those things. When I was doing it, it was disastrous. And then you said, we're not Puritans. These things are good.
They're good in themselves.
Money's good.
Pleasure's good.
Yeah, it's all good. But without God in your life, it'll kill you.
It'll turn on you.
Yeah, and it'll turn on you. You just read the tabloids, you'll see it.
And funny, I mean, generation after generation, we have to learn that lesson again. It's like the human race. It's all through the Bible. This lesson is very clear in all the great spiritual teachers. But it's as though we have to learn it again and again ourselves. We have to find it.
Boy, it takes an act of grace to crack you open.
Well, now, and talk about that, because, you're very honest about your own struggles with addiction, and now you've been clean and sober for, 50-some years, isn't it? Which is, again, what a wonderful grace that is. But a lot of the spiritual masters talk about you got to go all the way down to go up, that you got to go down, because you then hit bottom and you realize these various attachments, and then you can begin the journey up. Dante, most famously, right? He's got to go all the way down to the bottom. And then he finds Satan buried in the ice. Like, what's the source of this? Where are all my addictions coming from? Where are all my attachments coming from? And once you find that, then you can be free. Talk about your own experience with some of that.
I started using heroin at 14 years old.
At 14, wow.
And it got worse and worse. And before I started even recording, before I made a hit record, I was using, smoking pot, doing all this stuff. And one day, somewhere, I was under a staircase in a tenement building with this guy. We were getting off. Rolled up our sleeves, and he turned into the devil. I mean, he just turned into like a demon, whatever, and it scared me. And then what happened is, I told my wife, we moved to Florida in 1968. And Frankie Lyman from the Teenagers, from a doo-wop, very
great
popular.
Singer.
Oh, great singer.
Yeah.
He died February 1968. I would run the streets with him, and we'd get high together. We were good friends.
Yeah.
When he died, it threw me into I don't know what, it makes you think. And I don't know, somebody invited me to this program. And I walk into this vestibule of guys before they walk into the meeting room, and it's like the United Nations. It's like black guys, Jewish guys, Irish guys, Italian guys, everybody's there. And they're telling each other, and they're laughing, and they're falling on their knee. They're laughing from their belly. Yeah. I hadn't laughed. I was 28 years old. I hadn't laughed from my belly in 10 years. I used to laugh like this. Ha, ha, ha. I wasn't connected.
Yeah.
I knew the thing was real. I thought, what are these guys doing? I knew. So I go into the meeting room, and they're talking about their fears. They're talking about their joys. They're talking about their frustrations, their resentments, stuff that it wasn't going to see the light of day in my neighborhood. I would never talk to anybody about, maybe I'd sing about it, but I'm not going to talk to anybody about this. Well, it just, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
It took me, it just broke through where I started asking questions. And I remember there was a moment there, I totally ran out of people to blame.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I totally ran out of excuses. And I was just, it was over. And I was standing there and like, how do I start? And there's a line that says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. I said, what's the path? And they said, this is the path. Just read the book and just follow the directions, and I'll help you. That was it. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah. No, praise God. That's the grace of God. And then the moment, when you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. That's not a despairing line. That's a line of liberation. When you got nothing to fall back on.
Like the black preacher used to say, when you're down to nothing, God's up to something.
Right. There's a song. No, but that's right. That's all the spiritual masters have that stuff.
Yeah.
Where Christofferson just riffs on that. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. And that's not a despairing line at all. Once you get that, that's a line that's life-giving. I've got nothing left to lose because I'm not clinging to wealth, pleasure, honor, power. I don't need those things anymore. And now I'm ready to follow the path.
My friend wrote a book called The Fulfillment of All Desire.
Oh, Ralph Martin. Yeah, sure.
I said, Ralph, if you understand the title, you don't even have to read the book. It's just such a beautiful title because it's so true.
Yeah, I mean, we all are hungry for God, but then the desire gets deflected, and then it becomes addictive. That's soul doctoring language. The great soul doctors of the tradition knew that. My experience growing up was that we forgot a lot of our soul doctoring language, frankly. We left a lot of that behind for different reasons, but that's the key to all this stuff. The 12-step program comes out of a deeply, ultimately Christian, spiritual, scriptural source.
Absolutely.
They
gleaned it from the disciplines of St. Ignatius of Loyola.
Quite right, yeah. Quite right. And so the church should claim that and celebrate it because it's liberated all kinds of people in this beautiful way. Hey, I love this section of the book. I want to read some of this to you. What people taught you, right? Things that were taught to you. Van Morrison taught you to let go and let God. How'd that happen?
Well, a lot of it is a blend of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is not specifically one there's a lot of people in that section that taught me to let go and let God.
Yeah.
But Van is so free abandon,
What's he like personally? Do you know him personally?
He's a little barrel-chested guy that gets, don't get too loud or don't, he's a force of nature.
Yeah.
He again, man, there's just special people. I love being around the guy, it just...
came on recently with Tupelo Honey, I heard recently. That wonderful song of his? That's what he sings.
There's a guy, we're talking about inhabiting a character or inhabiting a song or a lyric.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how not to.
Right.
He can't do it wrong.
Yeah.
He just don't know how. The reason why we wrote the book, my friend Adam Jablin and myself, we're both in recovery. Adam's about 20 years in. I'm like 57. So we'd go out for lunches.
Yeah.
And we'd be telling each other stories. I said, it'd be an interesting thing to document these conversations because what they do is like we're reflecting on events in our life and they come out with a life lesson. And I said, how you see your belief system, not talking about it, not reading it from the book, and, reciting and talking theology and program and, we all do that. I mean, that's how I got it. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But I said, let's write stories because how you actually see your belief system is in relationships.
Yeah.
You see your belief system with your wife, with your kids, with your coworkers, with your, you see it. And so that's what the book is about. You could see it.
The great Henri de Lubac, the Catholic theologian, says we're always saved together, and all the doctrines of the church have a social dimension. It's never just me and Jesus. How do I save my soul? We're always saved together. It's people that reached out to you that saved you, that they were the instruments of grace, right? And you've been an instrument of grace for many people too. So that to me is a beautifully Catholic idea, right?
Well, I had a sponsor, I had a mentor, and he said something to me that changed my life. I get choked up every time I think about it. He was talking to me about Jesus, and I'm like from the Bronx. I get defiant. Don't tell me about God. I know God. He took away my obsession to drink and drug. You know, I became aware of his power before I became aware of his reality.
Mm-hmm.
So he's trying to tell me about Jesus, and he's saying, yeah, you know, you should make a commitment. Just look at this. Look, and I said, you know, I'm like, I know, you know, here's the junkie mantra.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. You know, they just, I know. And they don't know anything. You know? It's just...
2 fists of iron and going nowhere.
Yeah, right. I know. That's funny, that song, like, tells on itself, and then the guy goes right back to it.
Right.
Anyway, this guy, my mentor says to me, he says, Dion, I know you believe in God. I said, sure, I believe in God.
Yeah.
He took away my desire. He took away, I don't have to drug or drink anymore. He just took it out, took the obsession away. He said, would your God lie to you? I said, never. God is honesty. I said, God is truth. He said, ask him who Jesus is. And that was it. And he walked away. And I thought, wow, he trusts me just to ask my God who. So I would walk around the neighborhood, talking to God and asking him questions it never occurred to me to ask. You know, is Jesus your son?
Yeah.
Why? And
one answer.
you ask me, you'll get an answer.
Yeah.
That's why I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Quite right.
That's why I'm alive.
Hey, you know, an image from your book that I love, and it's to the point we were just talking about freedom. When is a train free? On the tracks or off the tracks? There's this sort of natural tendency to go, oh, no, I'm free when no one's telling me where to go, and I'm not following any path. It's when but think of a train off the tracks. It's talking about going nowhere, right? It's stuck in everything. It's meant to move, and it can't move. That's a great image of what goes wrong with us spiritually. And I also think, why is it so many pop singers, country, blues, rock and roll, love trains? Trains are a huge theme. I remember Dylan was in this tribute to Johnny Cash, and he goes, I want to sing one of your songs about trains. And, what is it about trains? Well, they're big, and they're moving, they're exciting, and the kind of appeals to the rock and roll thing. You know, recently I came across this, the great George Gershwin, right? He said one of the inspirations for Rhapsody in Blue, he's on the train in New York, getting ready to go, and the train is warming up, like this.
Yeah, that's
and
a
he's
rhythm.
hearing bum 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 ba-dum, bum bum ba-dum, bum bum ba-dum, bum bum. What is it about the trains? I think it's something. It's singing to us, right? Dylan, the slow train's coming, right? I meant to go somewhere, but your image is so good. I said, oh no, get me off that track. I don't want to be. And so where am I? I am completely stuck, frustrated. I'm big, I'm powerful, but I'm going nowhere, right? And the train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. Why do we love trains so much?
I don't know, the movement, the rhythm, it's going somewhere, it's powerful,
Yeah.
There's something strong about it,
And we get off the rails really easily, right? We find ourselves stuck going nowhere.
The rhythm of it, there's so many, I don't know. I wrote a few songs about train bound for glory,
Yeah, but that image helps me a lot, the train on the tracks or off the tracks. And, it's conventional to say, oh, no, I'm going to be really something. I'm off the...
The thing with rock and roll is it's absurd to think they're against structure or any kind of discipline. It's a dirty word. Like in New York, when I came into this program, they talked about the surrender. I said, surrender? I'm from the Bronx.
Yeah, I don't surrender to anybody.
You get my head and you beat it on the concrete, I'm not going to surrender.
Yeah.
You don't surrender, period.
Yeah.
So what are you talking? He said, no, it's not running away from anybody. It's running to someone. It's a sweet surrender. So I wrote a song called Sweet Surrender.
Yeah.
But this idea that it's so absurd that the structure, it's the moral clarity that the church gives you that sets you free. It's mind-blowing. No one could understand, no rock and roll is going to understand that without an act of grace, because it just doesn't compute. That structure is going to set you free.
Yeah.
And it's the most beautiful thing in the world. It's just...
I'm always harping on this because everything in the culture, every song, every movie, all the pop stars talk about, it's my life, it's my choice. You know, and most movies are about someone who they're coming down hard on him, and then he or she finds his own path. No, that's not it. It's the Dylan thing again. It's the paradox. Yes, to be on your own like a rolling stone, but that doesn't mean I'm deciding everything. It means what you're talking about is I'm finally liberated from all these things that are grabbing hold of me. I'm back on the track so I can actually move where I'm supposed to go. I'm like a rolling stone going down the hill the way it's supposed to, right? But see, I think the church got bad at proclaiming that message. We became reticent, or we were afraid of claiming our own spiritual teachers. And we needed some rock and roll singers to teach us, you know, these truths.
I thought freedom was doing anything you want, especially if you didn't get caught.
Right.
You know, I didn't know it was the ability to do God's best or do the good, or, you know, it's wonderful to be free. It's freedom of excellence, you know, and that's what we want. That's what you want. Charles Messina from Lower Manhattan, I mean, Little Italy, a great playwright, came over to me. He says, he met me. We went out. He said, I'd like to write a story about you. I said, you know, I've been to some of these plays, and all these people, they start off, you know, they're in a little neighborhood, and they're like, they don't have much, and they have a little problem at home, and they go on, and then at the end, it's da-da-da, they're at, you know, they're at Carnegie Hall or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I said, we gotta go beyond that. Mm-hmm. We have to take it to a higher pitch.
Yeah.
And because success and fulfillment are two different things.
Right,
I said, I don't want to end it with he's successful. Right. It's got to go into fulfillment, because I think the world could use a story of transformation and not somebody getting better. You know, look what he did. He's getting better and better. I tell my friends, I say, I'm not getting better. I'm getting closer. Yeah. You know, because I love what you say, that it's not God punishing you. You're actually punished more by your sins, by what you do, by acting out on these defects of character, the lying, the cheating, the stealing. It pulls you away from God, and you feel judged. Right. Yeah. Because you're moved. You know, you're not, because God is love. God
allows you to. Right. That's right. It's the friction set up by resisting God that we interpret as punishment. But it's not God being cruel to us or arbitrary, and it's all designed to lead us back to Him. Right. Get the train back on the tracks. Hey, tell me, as we're coming to the end of our time, we have mutual friends in Scott Hahn and Mike Aquilina, both fine people, huh? And they've been good friends of yours.
Love them both. Yeah. Well, Scott Hahn, we all know, and he's just... But Mike Aquilina is another story. He's written over 50...
Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
Oh, man, he's unbelievable. He's written over 50. He's a patristic writer, you know, the first 300 years of the church. Yeah. Do you have time for this story?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in Rome with Scott Hahn.
Yeah.
Mike Aquilina, I didn't know. He was on the bus, 30 people on the bus. Yeah. We're standing under a statue of St. Jerome. I say to Mike Aquilina, ignorance of Scripture is ignorance of Christ, St. Jerome. Yeah. He goes, the Thunderer. I said, the Thunderer? What's that? I said, I know the Wanderer, but what's the Thunderer? So he starts telling me about St. Jerome, you know, back in the day. I don't know, I think he lived in the 300s.
Difficult guy, 300.
Yeah, difficult. He says he would curse at people. He had no patience. I said, What do you mean? He's a saint. How could he become a saint? He goes, takes all kinds to make it to heaven. I said, oh my God, I got a chance here. You know? I said, this guy deserves a song, you know. And then I start looking at it, and Saint Jerome came from, you know, I don't know. His
like Croatia or
Croatia.
that area,
his
right.
mother sent him to Rome.
Yeah.
What was it? Pope Damius?
Damasus.
Damius. And he saw how bright he was. The brightest of the bright would be sent to Rome. He saw how bright he was. He said, I want you to translate the Bible. So he translates the Bible from Greek to Latin.
Yeah. And Hebrew to Latin. He did both Old and New Testaments.
I know, but after he did that, he didn't like the Romans. He didn't like the way they dressed, the way they talked. So he moves to Israel. And there's, you know, we're talking about this. So he moves to Bethlehem, and he makes friends with a rabbi. He learns Hebrew, and he translates it again. Now, this gives ignorance of Scripture.
Yeah.
There's ignorance of Christ, new meaning. I mean, the guy knows every word from every language. I don't know, you know. So I wrote a song called The Thunderer, you know, St. Jerome, you know. God's angry man, his crotchety scholar, was St. Jerome, the great name caller, who cared not a dime for the laws of libel, but in his spare time translated the Bible. Right. St. Jerome, the Thunderer.
Excellent, yeah.
So now in the Bronx, the football team at St. Jerome's High School is named, they're called the Thunderers.
Oh, is that right? Pretty good.
And they use and that's...
Well, that's pretty good. Because he's kind of like a guy from the Bronx, isn't he? St. Jerome had a little bit of attitude.
So Mike Aquilina and I just got together, and we wrote three #1 blues albums like during COVID, you know. He is a find, you know. It's like we got along so well that trading words and melodies, and I wrote some of the greatest songs. The last 5 years, I wrote 40 of the greatest songs I've ever written. And Bishop Barron, I don't know how I did it. I couldn't plan it if I tried. I caught a wave.
All His grace, huh?
Yeah.
I think of, you like Thomas Merton as I do, and Merton's famous prayer, which is in line with what we've been talking about. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I don't see the road ahead of me. I don't know for certain where it's going to end. And I don't even know if I'm doing your will. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I do. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always. You know, I love about that prayer is it begins with that kind of freedom we were talking about. Look, I don't know where I'm going.
Like a rolling stone. Huh?
Yeah, I'm like a rolling stone here. I've let go. I found freedom. But I think the desire to please you does in fact please you. And if I have that, you're going to lead me. I'm going to roll the way you want me to roll, you know. And Lord, I trust in that. Therefore, I'll trust you always.
Never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah.
Never.
But that's been your life, hasn't it? From touring with Buddy Holly up to this day, only about 100 miles from where Buddy Holly's plane went down. But Dion, great being with you. I could talk to you all day about everything, but delighted you took the time to come here.
I'm delighted that you asked.
Well, God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you so
much. All right. Peace.